Stand clear. Luggage, doors, operate. Stand clear. Drunk man regurgitating on a neighbour's doorstep. They wouldn't dare complain, I pride myself in pain. Thrown out of one pub into another, where mothers of 18 snub foreigners and let themselves be seen serving Guinness with a shamrock. Unnerving as I wonder whether to disturb the froth as I walk the walk to my chair by the table beneath the stairs. Wishing all the best as a blonde girl with great breasts and a decent face in that order that I'd never seen before nor would again for all the world, a sweetheart based across the border. My semi-digested kebab will lie there for a while, dried out as I walk past the next day. The door will not open to suggest it may be occupied. Inside, a family of 8 hide in squalor, survive and hibernate, happy to be stowed away. While ignorance is walking on a path where only the seated can be respected. Talking on phones, clones affecting little but repeated cycles of history. She looks up to me as though my kind donation was salvation and I was Christ. From my one yo-yo 73, testimony that sometimes men weren't mice, blinded when their tails fell off, reminded by a subtle cough that standing tall is a privilege, had sitting small as art, wrapped in skin 4 years out of date, a blanket of the same state in a card that simply read, living is dying when love is dead. So I sat down beside her to listen to her speak. She said people walk past me and think that I'm weak, but I was sent to Liverpool when I was 12 years old with a one-way ticket and a handful of clothes, told by my family not to come home 3 days, 4 months and 31 years ago, and I can still smell the fear that grew in every girl's room as we waited alone in that hospital room to atone for a sin that we didn't commit but were forced to abort and too scared to admit we'd been raped by an uncle, a priest, or a friend of the family circle, and told to pretend we were visiting cousins that left in the 50s to find work in the buildings in one of the cities. But they think I'm a junkie, cause I live in the streets. It makes it easier for them to walk past me and meet or ignore me in doorways, or when I'm down by the keys to call me a smackhead, than to stop and to see that the only real difference between myself and themselves is the horrors I suffered back when I was 12. And as I listened to her story, I noticed something strange. As soon as I sat down, the energy had changed. It was like the city existed on a different plateau, where the noise from above met the silence below. And as I watched them shuffle past in their new designer suits, I wondered how they give themselves to such empty pursuits. But she read me as easily as Anne and Barry and said everyone's got their cross to carry, and just because they dress nice and choose a chemical smell, they bleed the same way. So remember this well, that sometimes the rougher and the worse that we look is a sign of a much more interesting book. And she laughed at me then, and I can still see her smile dimple her cheeks as her eyes all the while held onto mine and refused to let go till I promised I would, and she nodded. I know. And that was 10 years ago, and I went back the other day. I wanted to apologize, to say I'd been away, but that I still remembered what she'd said to this day and how she'd changed the way that I saw the world. But where I found her, curled up against the cold, it was just a retail unit sold to some cookie cutter store, selling furniture and more. And when I asked for her, I swear they looked at me as though I was diseased. And so I turned to leave and headed back down to the bus, where I knew that I could trust that in the boot I'd find him waiting. Tell him to stand clear. Luggage, doors, operate. Here the rushing waters meet to wash the weary mountain's feet, where everyone will stop to greet the stranger passing in the street. Although they may be friend or foe, to know they must acknowledge so that passing time can soon decree the mind's compatibility. I came across the wooden bridge as I approached the yellow ridge, whose civil folk I duly found encaptured by their hollow ground. To many places man must go, from faceless streets to empty roads, through inner journeys of the soul in stifling heat and bitter cold. If travelling but by the self, those learning shall inherit wealth, who need not false modernities to cradle insecurities, who fears but they be feared may find the secrets of the human mind, exposed in fields of fertile bliss, where spring has washed and summer kiss. He whose vision of this land in passing left the deftest hand, upon the shoulders passion felt in those who prayed and whom so knelt, not at the covered altar there, but long before in open air, whose heavens needed not a roof to convalesce in their reproof, whose ocean in the distance roared, I'll comfort all who dare adore. So dare they did, and there the gates stood open for the mind's embrace. I come in sadness to reply. The man ignored his battle cry, where life but now computered mind has changed the face of humankind. Of Ireland's old, the remnants few still walk to smell the honeydew before the break of morning comes through concrete fields of damage done. We sacrifice this mortal curse, our peace of mind for fattened purse, whose Eden governed by the snake has hissed and cried, the West's awake, allowing Adam and fair Eve to profligate at which they please, and said, live life at liberty, look not for what the future sees, but bask in these prosperities. By our consent, the corporate shift came on the North Atlantic drift, with plastic gods of chip and pin that gave to all who wanted in, who never had before nor then, but thus emboldened could pretend that never would they starve again, a fate that fell on greater men. Now silently they flock once more, the swallows perch to leave this shore, yet theirs is not a spring return, for many seasons shall in turn pass longingly without the song of generations come and gone. Upon his grave I lay my word, a gift unto the modern world. Here he lies where horsemen pass at speed on roads where once lay grass. Their pockets laden seek to buy the memoirs of this poet's life, whose Anglo-Irish politics survived impassioned rhetoric. Behold the fascist tourists all who walk this rocky rolling ball to capture moments with machines preserving loss of memories. Now find the peasantry reborn and wealth the earth is left forlorn. We do not own our lives but owe until the winds of death have blown. Under bare Ben Bulbin's gaze the church majestic stands unfazed, though Yeats in flesh has long decayed, his spirit in the mountain stayed. Outside the gates I stood to see the fall of free society, where young and old must pay to breathe this air of ancient Irishry. Cast a close eye on mind, on breath, merchant pass by. Had I the wealth of 7 kings or land to call my own, I'd sacrifice what money brings to walk the fields of home. If from that earth a well would spring, if every seed should grow, I'd need nor want for anything that any man could know. For there I'd hear the swallows sing their songs both high and low, as though they are remembering the days of long ago, when nature knew no suffering and time passed ever slow. I'd pull the fruit fresh from the trees, I'd pick the bitter slow, then full of red ripe raspberries I'd pack my things and go, to tend the hive of honeybees, to hear the cattle low, and mend the few commodities that I had come to know. But had I neither wealth nor land, nor garden now to grow, I'd lay beneath the sky at night and make the plough my home. For man must come to understand the heavens on his own. In the half-light he stands as farmers might, his weathered old hands resting on the loose stone wall. His frame is smaller than in myth. A head of white hair that sits languid atop once broad shoulders stares vacantly across the golden valley, drawn by the din of the distant drums. In these fields he fought and died for the fallen pride of Ulster. Before creeds of division brought derision to the villages, before the pillage of genocide painted as famine, his ancient ghost, a slump silhouette now barely visible beneath the boughs of the aged oak, was a curious child fishing with Finnegas for the sacred salmon. I too was a child then, new to every nuance when I saw him first. His wind-cracked skin, lips that craved a quenched thirst, spoke to me in fits and bursts in a language foreign to its own kin, of a lineage lost in a war amongst brethren. All are equal on this earth, who search not for difference to find cause. Let he who fears become isolate, he who segregates become desolate. He paused and sobbed slow tears. He steadied and with summoned strength proceeded to then speak at length. In tones melodic more at ease with me he waxed now lyrically. I've slept for many centuries beneath the city in the east, to waken only when the pleas of Ireland in despair increased. Only the horn with 3 shrill blasts was fit to wake me up at last. These tears I shed I recognise as realer than this land my eyes perceive as that as long before, when warriors from this island bore to Roisin promises of lore that in her need we would restore her to her former glory for her dignity and nothing more. Though restless often were my dreams, the tyrannies of kings and queens could never kill the spirit leaned that lingers still in hills and streams. Much worse, and that which worries most, is that we've sold from coast to coast our sovereign gains to foreign banks, and with beguiling pleas and thanks the citizens in cities dance to worship gods of circumstance. But now they bleed our nation dry and leave but never say goodbye. We act as though scorned lovers shamed who seek to squarely pass the blame. A victim culture, woe is me, turned farcical plutocracy that never learns from history. Across the fields they marched, victors enriched by the legacies of battle, with sashes draped across straight backs, bowler-hatted chaplains that cut a calm comedy from the chaos of self. Man cannot rise against what he cannot see. He fixed his eyes on me, a frail freckled child whose eyes, bluer than the midday skies, turned pale and grey before they cried. We were born under the same tree, but those who live in chains cannot die free. I, who knew no history, had marvelled in the mastery of the piper's pride. The oranges, the purples, every lodge afloat in the sea of colour. Who sees now the deeper red in the promise of bloodshed was wiser then, an ageless figment of a life ahead. From his face he wiped the well of all wisdom, his thumb scarred by the burst blister where the salmon burned. I saw her on Street's strand, etching letters in the wet sand with the feather that met her hand like a pencil fallen from the sky. At first it looked like she was writing love letters from the moon to the sun, the way the waves come to her commands and night rises slowly to swallow us, following the silhouettes we paint like barriers around ourselves into a deeper darkness, searching for light. When she started to sing, the sun's knees fell from beneath it as it gave in to the horizon, flinging its brush across the skies in ever-changing paintings of pure art. The first stars of the universe emerged blinking from their beds, drawn to her voice like dolphins to the fisherman's oar. As the Sija fled from the dunes, as Athena stalked Ben Bulben's boar, and even Gearman turned his head to hear her sing once more. Balin knocked his bow and fired low across the night to summon druids from their graves and hurl the harbinger of light. Balor cast his evil eye, Lu stretched out his arm to Cullen through his shoulders wide beside the Tuathan, lit up by fires burning bright from all across the land. There rose the spirits of the glen whose souls had never died, and after them the mortal men came on to lead the fight. The Pukas and Fomorians within her pastures stood, as Emmett cleared his throat and then addressed his brotherhood. Baru and Wolfstone came to them to forge as well they could the spears of ancient Ireland in oak carved from her wood. And when Eru finished writing, she put her feather down, shook the weather from her hair, then slowly turned around to see that there beneath the mountain, on every blade of ground, old Ireland as an army stood, her people gathered round, drawn from all directions by the siren of her sound.
You people of your native land must come together side by side, take each other by the hand and fight for honor and for pride. When all that's now has come to pass, will we win or will we lose? This is all of you I ask. Your time has come to choose.
Across the bay the lightning flashed in streaks above Slieve Lee, but undeterred the crowds amassed and gathered on fatigue to march from west upon the east, the wakened from their sleep, the men who suffered pain the least but soon would come to weep. And this at last she sang to them as waves lapped at her feet.
Come home, heroic Irish men. Come home, heroic Irish men. And now taste defeat, for singing is the calf who feeds a hungry, sour tea. Come home.
The ocean washed her words away, and in the night she rode, a horse as white as any wave to rest in Cheernano. As to the pale they set their sails and in the darkness sang the song of Eru and the tales of how their war began. to mark the future with a sign of all that is replete with fear and carved in corporate design. Though you have fled to leave behind in search of riches from afar, romantic Ireland cannot die. It's at the heart of what we are. What mortal men before us went, whose names within the history books speak of heroic deeds once spent for Ireland's freedom, lives forsook. Well, now the noose so tightly binds, the hangman stands his door ajar. Romantic Ireland cannot die. It's at the heart of what we are. Was it for this that Larkin stood with Connolly all those years ago? For this the marches, this the blood for sovereignty to come and go? Did they not sound a rallying cry to summon poets near and far? Romantic Ireland cannot die. It's at the heart of what we are. Yet now the years have turned and still, with exile spread across the earth, and fumbling in the greasy till has come to symbolise our worth. An island left, bereft of pride, where all but I would now concur. Romantic Ireland's dead inside, and all that's left is what we were. The notion takes me now to address this fabrication, in the hope that in so doing I'll achieve some vindication, in my conviction that the gatherings a marketeer and dream, to exploit our sense of nationhood in an attempt to paint us green. So it's hardly that surprising to call the farce a joke, conjured up by bureaucratic think tanks in the smoke. Come home one eye, come home all, come hear the diddly eye. Just don't stay again too long and make sure to plan goodbye. Cause this wasn't really welcome home. It's more a flying visit to let you know that all is well, that there's no need to miss it. Sure, Ireland is a grand wee place, ah yeah, we're all the same as when you left those years ago and climbed aboard the plane. They might say we're European now, but that just isn't true. We're just as proud an island as we were when split in two. We fly the flag at every small occasion that we get, to puff our chests and claim the nation hasn't died just yet. So come home again, young Irishmen, and bring your Aussie wives. Tell her how you never would have left but had to survive. Tell her how it's great to be back on the land, to taste the air. Show her the pubs you used to know where now there's no one there. But when you're back in Brisbane, telling everyone you meet about how great a time you had at home, how Ireland's just as sweet and fluffy as it always was, how the whiskey drank was neat. Just don't talk about the junkies shooting up on Abbey Street. Or don't mention the reports of clerical sex abuse, or how the courts are kicking people out onto the streets. Sure, that doesn't fit the image, so it isn't primetime news. Or the ghosts of states still haunting towns and villages around. Or the suicide epidemic and the numbers that have drowned in lakes around the country cause they sank beneath the debt that we never created but were landed with, and yet not a single cabinet minister speaks out against this fraud. They just stand beside the Taoiseach nodding dogs to just applaud when the motion comes to order to give themselves a raise or extend their winter break or their summer holidays. No, don't mention that, Ireland. This is just a gathering where people from around the world have come back home to sing Spansel Hill or Raglan Road to belt them out aloud. And every man and woman both throws back their shoulders proud to sing the words they never knew when they were still at home, but learn to love when far away and otherwise alone. But this isn't just some dream of pleasant days gone by. Now we pledge goodbye to those pleasant days and changed our ways again. My mind been bent on rambling, while the ghosts of Irishmen to Ireland I did fly. We'll live and die on foreign shores, though some will still pretend. I stepped on board of the decision in the end, and I parted with a will. Was theirs to pull the anchor from crosses Spansel Hill. So this is for the immigrants who claim to love this land. Where are you now in Egypt? To come and make a stand for the future of an island where your kids may one day live. Let's gather now as equals till we've nothing left to give. Was it for this? The pagans drove with woven baskets born of love to worship at the altar of the harvest god Crom Dubh. As the sun rose up the reek and then set down the other side to summon pilgrims to its peak to come from far and wide, before the Christians came to Ireland and proceeded to rename it. Croagh Patrick, as it stands today, will proudly they proclaim it as a place of modern pilgrimage and not the site of ancient heritage that history forgot. Was it for this? The Druids stood before the old gods of the trees and founded schools within their groves to learn the mysteries that lay buried in the branches and encoded in the leaves as the language of the earth written there for all to see. Was this why they came between the people and the great divine and shed the blood of mortal flesh to prophesize through time? Was this the future they once saw? Was it this they had in mind when they foretold in days of old what's born can never die? Was it for the only empire in Rome that still exists to confiscate our island, though some would still insist that we were never conquered, that somehow we escaped in spite of all the plundered land and the children that were raped? Was it the rules they teach in schools they claim were set in stone that have rendered us like lambs to collapse if left alone, that now bring us back in droves to a church that we've outgrown but are scared to leave or to believe we're better on our own? Was it for the famine, for the Irish Holocaust that was rarely thus examined, but in truth the human cost was inflicted on this island by the British, and yet peace is supposed to be some pure and noble diplomatic feat? But Mandela fought for what is right and was called a terrorist. by the same people who in death have claimed his right to coexist, was never left in any doubt nor disputed in the slightest, 'cause the darkest stars that ever were in death will shine the brightest. Was it for Biffo, sight in Lisbon, as the only show in town, inviting Europeans to kick us while we're down, inciting fear amongst the people in need of some relief from the systematic slaughter of a nation's self-belief? Was it for drum and bow in Anglo, picking figures from their arse, singing Nazi anthems to elucidate the farce of both the major parties, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, for pretending key decisions are still made within the Dáil? Was it for this? Some keepers of the peace have forgotten the translation of An Garda Síochána, or was it infiltration that has set the force upon the course of corporate racketeering at the expense of innocence for a private profiteering? Well, the greatest crime there's ever been on this island is ongoing, as the IMF still strip us clean and bare despite our knowing, yet their crimes are somehow normalised and accepted as deserved by the dogs within our government and the masters that they serve. Was it for the US flights of extraordinary rendition, stopping off at Shannon on the way to their perdition, as if it's nothing more than a casual decision to be complicit in the torturing of innocent civilians? But instead of pushing peace, we imprisoned the protesters and determined their release at the whim of the investors who have bought and sold this island for the promises of oil in pipes they plan on laying up what once was farming soil. But the cows are gone, and the people are gone, and the farms are left to fail. Now they probe the seas for oil and gas, the lakes and land for shale. Will the sycophants and the psychopaths clap backs within the pale, with an onus and the bonus for the speedy fire sale of our water and electric that could both be ours for free, with a slight recalculation of our own priorities? If instead of paying billions for debt we never owed, we invested in renewables and let the future flow? Was it for the lattes, the ciabattas and goat's cheese, or the double mocha frappe, sculpted quiffs and skinny jeans? For the oh my gods, the fuck my life, the you don't understands, the like you knows, the BFFs, the let's make dinner plans? Was it really for the hipsters, or are they just a glitch in the evolutionary motherboard, a momentary twitch that normally exists in every generation but is usually ignored by righteous indignation? Was it for this? The proclamation was read out upon the steps, for this spire defamation that Bella and Bertie left, the cast shadows over bullet holes and pillars that remain, standing by the GPO where the volunteers were slain. For this, the Fianna marched across the mountains and the bogs. For this, we killed each other for the right to label gods. For this, we raise our children just to watch them up and leave as another generation educated and deceived. Or was it for the moment where you finally realise that all that really matters is what's right before your eyes? The simple understanding that come whatever else, you'll never know another as you learn to know yourself. And even though we come to love with everything we are, the truth is every one of us has once been battle scarred, and the purest love that still remains is written in that kiss before we fall asleep at night that says, it was for this. Do not pray for sacrifice, nor motion to your gods. This is not our nation's price, this isn't Ireland's cause. Before the rule of British law, before the Normans came, we stood and in ourselves we saw more than just a name. But centuries have nullified the stories of the dead, and all but few now left to die have turned their backs and fled. The day has come, but they covered their tattoos with the corporate logos of importance in offices where voices are a luxury that doesn't exist. We still live in the shadows of empire, where the lost souls bullied into time's last second end where beginning should have been, the blood of our being, the ancient of our ways. I've seen them fly south for a winter that will see no spring, singing songs from the island of the coming, the going, heroes all of another place and time. I know you now. I see the face of everything and nothing reflect upon itself with what is. A sleeping warrior who lies upon the ridge above Loch Gill, waiting for leaders in tomorrow's army. I am that you are, present of all being, product of all consciousness, naked in the eyes of what is. Before language, before life, we have shared energy, the purest love man will ever know. A test of man's not how he deals with life where nothing's wrong, but how he copes when hope is gone while darkness and despair surround his every waking thought, how then he must go on, to rise again as resolute and fill his lungs with air. Though night surrounds us all at times, and life is often bleak, we're yet the masters of ourselves, and in that mastery, we can choose to focus on our strengths, on what makes us unique, and through the choices that we take, create who we will be. But when the darkness comes again, as winter falls in time, the noble and the truest friend shall be the one to climb, not to a height above himself, but to a one below, who reaches out to those who need a hand that says, I know. And when the test comes to an end, if ever he is asked, he can meet the gods as equals, and tell them that he passed. All pagans come to realize when first they come to learn. All life consists of compromise, all death from what they burn. They never walk the earth the same when this has come to pass. For change, the only constant flame, consumes and turns to ash. All deeds and thoughts that came to them when they were as before, but are not now nor will again be less since they are more. In their time upon the earth, they'll come to see no truth, that great facade of human worth as being absolute. Accepting self as pluralized, all thought is of their own, is not some illness to despise, nor path to walk alone. In every good is every man, in every evil too. There is no concrete master plan that must be seen as true. But what there is what is sought. Take care with what you seek, and on the path, in battles fraught, be strong for men.